Here's the unpopular opinion. I hate a 57 on snare. So we're going to get right to it here. The snare is the bread and butter of your track because you can go back through your childhood and I guarantee you're going to say, man, did you hear that snare? We all have done it. In conversations with our friends, with other musicians and other players and engineers, we always go to, man, did you hear that snare, when we really love a snare, because it's such a foundational part of every track rhythmically and just the energy, all of it. With the snare stands out, I would even say just as much, and sometimes in certain genres, more than the vocal. So we got to get it right. So I'm going to talk about the 3 T's here: our tone, our tuning, and type. And what I mean by that is what type of microphone, because we're going to get into something here in a little bit that is going to be an unpopular opinion, but well, we will cover that. So we're going to start with the tuning, and that starts with whatever kind of heads you use. I have several snares here in the studio, and you want to pair up with what kind of music you're doing. If you do a lot of sensitive stuff that needs a lot of dynamic and range, you're probably going to use less muffling, which is going to go with our tone, but you're also going to probably use like a single ply head. You're going to get a lot more dynamic and sensitivity if you're doing a lot of ghost notes. I have snares here that have that for that option if you're looking for that. Like with the snare I have up here now, this is more of a deeper tone that I'm looking for with more body and crack to it. So this has a 2-ply head on it from Evans, and it's also got the drilled holes in the overtone ring because it actually, this allows me to not have to do as much muffling straight out of the chute with this one. So it already has a nice, because if you listen, this is with no muffling. This is how I have it tuned right now. It's very balanced. It's got some decay, but it's without any muffling on it. It's actually quite nice. Just a little bit of ring, not a lot of ring. And depending on the track, I'd probably further dampen that because in the studio, we're all about controlling the snare ring, tom ring, all of that. And then the next step would be the actual tuning of your head. A lot of people will say, like DW is big on this, and I think there's some merit to it, that the timbre of the shell or whatever it is, you need to match that. I say phooey on that because you can do low tunings, medium tunings, high tunings with the same head and still get a great sound. But you want to make sure whenever you're putting the new head on that you pre-stretch it and that whatever you do, you hold here at the center so you get rid of some of that fundamental and you're actually tapping lug to lug to make sure you have a good even tone and there's no weird tones going from lug to lug, that you're matching the pitch of those partials and upper frequencies that you're getting, the harmonics, if you will, that you get those right. And on the bottom head, it's not as big of an issue, but you do want to make sure that it's tight enough because it can lead to weird snare buzz issues and things like that from the sympathetic resonance if you don't get the bottom head tight enough. So I still use the same method for that because I like to have each lug kind of as close to that same pitch as possible. But with the bottom head, it's not going to matter quite as much. It's just more that you get enough tension on it. And be careful because it's so thin. We're talking like 0.003 of an inch on the bottom head on most bottom heads that it's very easy to tear them. So the next thing will be tone, which has a lot to do with the way you tune it. A lot of this goes hand in hand with how you get your snare to sound great. For me, I typically like medium to low tunings on a lot of snares. That's just for the kind of music I do. It fits the best. I have some here tuned to high when I need it. I have a piccolo really for that when I'm needing more of the high stuff. I think on bigger shells, like this is a 6.5 by 14, usually high tunings, I just don't care for the way they actually resonate. I just feel like it chokes them too much, and that could relate to the snare beds and getting into more of actually how it's built. I'm not totally sure on that, but I usually like a medium tuning, and certainly I love low tunings for a lot of the stuff I do. And again, but with tone, a lot of it is controlling the ring. I like to use heads that kind of can pre-control it for me, and then you can use lots of different assortments. I have the Evans, I have slap clats, drum dots, moon gels. I keep a lot on hand because different drummers like different kinds. Some drum dots are typically my favorite, or slap clats, because I feel like they control the ring without actually killing the tone or choking it out too much. And then you can make your own. I have these guys here where you just take some gaff tape and some little pieces of Mylar. And these actually work quite well because we'll use this as an example for, you can do this at your house with stuff you probably have laying around your studio now. Put it around one of the edges from like a lug to lug, and it'll control the tone quite a bit. Right there. I mean, you know, you have this laying around your house if you need to control it without having to buy anything. So that's really a big part of the tone. And then the next part of your tone, all these go hand in hand. And it's all very simple. It's all trial and error from the kind of sound that you like. But if you use these simple methods, they will help you capture a great tone. Is you want to use a good quality dynamic or condenser. I'll use condensers on like jazz and stuff like a Cam 84 or something like that, and blend them both actually. I do have a bottom mic. I'll talk about that real quick. I don't care for them. I just have that option. They don't sound natural to me. And if you're going to use them, make sure you flip the polarity on it so they're both in phase. That's really how I'm going to talk about the bottom mics, is because you just want to point it at the strainers and just kind of capture that sound. Some people like it. I don't care for it, so I'm not even going to cover it that much because I just don't think it's a natural sound for the drums. In fact, I mean, I like to capture the rooms, and you guys have already seen this video because this is coming out post because we screwed up our snare video. I'm going to go ahead and mention that. If I'm referring to other videos, it's because we've already put those out there because our snare video got messed up. I prefer to get more of a natural snare sound through the overheads, rooms, the stairwell mic we talked about. And it may, because even when you think about it, when you have a snare mic that's, you know, 5 to 6 inches away from the center of the drum right up on it, that's really not a natural. We're not listening to a snare like this. But that's also what gives a lot of modern pop music that it's all about an art canvas, and we're creating things that maybe aren't natural and things that have a lot of power and emotion that you only get from something like this that's kind of, you know, zoomed in from that perspective. And I think you get a much more natural sound, if that's even the right word for something so close mic'd, from the top. It's just a much more balanced sound to me than just those annoying strainers just right there in your ear, an inch away from it. But here's the unpopular opinion. I hate a 57 on snare. I cannot stand it. I think it's way too mid-rangey. The bleed rejection is not that great compared to other really good microphones that are out there, including the one that I use, which is the SE V7X. I think I mean, just naturally, like what you're hearing with me hitting is flat at the console. You know, it's just the actual sound of the microphone because it captures such great low end. The top end is nice. It takes EQ well. And the bleed rejection is much, much better than a 57. So that's what I use. And again, all this ties in together of how using these muffling techniques, tuning it right, getting the right microphone goes a long way from just throwing it up there with no muffling and throwing a 57 on it and yeah, it is what it is. You follow just these simple guidelines here. Oh, and another thing we'll mention too is strainer, man. You can get yourself into real trouble with the strainers, depending on what kind of sound you want. You don't want too much sympathetic resonance, but it's a balancing act because you want the strainers loose enough that you're getting the sensitivity and the dynamic and the sound of the strainers even on the top mic. It's real easy to over choke your strainers and just totally ruin the sound of a snare, even if you got it tuned right, everything else right, mic placement good microphone. That's another thing I want to talk about too, is where you place the mic. I like it a couple inches in, pointing at the center. A lot of people like to point them straight down, right on the edge, and you're getting a lot of those crappy, just weird overtones that you're actually trying to get rid of, especially for a direct mic. Because again, think of it, you're zooming in on the actual sound with these close mics. So it's going to over-exacerbate those greatly. That's why we end up over-muffling, and a lot of people over-muffle this stuff because they're getting a lot of this. If you bring that mic in and point it to the center, you're getting the crack, you're getting where the meat of the snare is without as much of the overtones and getting some of those, you know, off rejection there from the microphone polar pattern. So yeah, it's simple formulas here, man. Quality mic, quality tuning, learning how to appropriately dampen it, and using heads that can kind of achieve that for you without overdampening and getting your string retention right will take you a long way in getting a great snare sound. And again, avoid 57s. I know everyone wants to use a 57 because somehow it's become the standard. You'll be much more happy if you check out other alternatives that are out there now, including this one. When I heard this on snare for the first time, I'm like, why would anyone use a 57 when this is the same price and sounds infinitely better on a snare? There's great situations for 57s. So it's not that I hate the 57 itself. I don't like it on snare, just like I hate 421s on toms. So it is what it is. But again, experiment, try for yourself, applying some of these tried and true methods, and your snare will sound great.